So let's just start with why are we striking? Why are you striking?
We're on strike as writers for a number of issues. I think fundamentally we're really here to preserve the craft of screenwriting, the career of writing. Back in 2014, streaming came along, and what was promised to be sort of this like new landscape of immense creative opportunities, the streamers, the CEOs, the 10 companies came in and they completely destroyed the economic model that for so long has worked in Hollywood. And it's suppressed wages, it's created economic environments that cause writers to be working less, that cause actors to be working less. And so we've been out here for 141 days, making our presence known, saying we have a number of issues in the TV landscape with mini rooms, with sending writers to set, with wages, with feature writers and free development, and also against the battle against AI.
So Matthew, tell us, we're talking about workforce development, we're talking about jobs also. We're talking about economy and the California economy. Tell us a little bit about the impact of what this means to the California economy. I mean, how many jobs are we talking about in the creative industries? Do you have an idea of that?
Well, nationally, 5.2 million creative workers in the workforce, generating over $1 trillion at this point. Over 700,000 small businesses across the country, and in California alone, well, in the nation alone, there's 2.1 million jobs in production, and those numbers are from the Motion Picture Association. So when you think about Georgia's economy, New Mexico's economy, Texas, Montana, and all these states who didn't traditionally have a strong production economy, who are incentivizing creative labor and production to come to their states, when you stop that, like this kind of strike, you are stopping tax revenue, which provides infrastructure. You're stopping income for all the downstream businesses. You know, we have a highly interdependent local commercial ecosystem. So when the circus comes to town and you have production come to town, it's not just the jobs underneath our tent, it's also restaurants and construction and transportation, and it's hundreds of thousands of local jobs. So we're stopping that as well. And so we see the economic impact downstream when our business strikes.
Why should other arts workers, ones who are not writers for TV, film, who are not actors, why should they care? People who are in theater, for example, dancers, graphic designers, other people that we identify as part of what we call the creative economy, why should they care about this strike?
Well, there's definitely been a concentration of wealth at the top. There are 8 entertainment CEOs who have made millions, if not billions, in profits off the work that we create. We've helped them make that money, and so all we're asking is to participate in the wealth off the content that we have built. I think that AI, the issue of AI, is incredibly important, and we writers are on the forefront of this battle, where we're trying to guarantee human protections so that everyone has work, has a place in the economy, and so that we're not being completely overrun by algorithms, by ChatGPT, which is coming for not just entertainment jobs, but jobs across the country, if not the world.
So, and these are good paying jobs, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, because I think there's sometimes this sort of thought that if you enter into the arts, you're a starving artist. But traditionally, what you guys do is a good paying job in the arts. But we're seeing that if this moves forward in terms of what the streaming services are and the way that they are treating the people who are making the content, that these will no longer be good paying jobs or potentially even jobs.
They are good paying jobs, but to me what's more important is stability, is the opportunity to make a career of the arts. And these tech bros have come in and completely tried to gigify the Hollywood entertainment business model that since the 1930s has worked so successfully for every single person who creates content. They get to participate in the profits of that content. And with streaming, with these tech bros coming in and gigifying the economy of Hollywood, we're just not seeing that anymore. So that's what we're really fighting for the long-term stability of our careers.
And you get stability with transparency. And so with the lack of transparency and data from these companies, what we create is an extended value product. And so because the product we create has extended value and we're sharing in the success in perpetuity of the thing because of the data and transparency that we had agreed to for decades, now that that's gone, it robs us. It's wage theft. And it goes downstream too, because, as Fran Drescher said, when SAG went on strike, the business changed, but the contracts didn't. And so this is a course correction. And so that's why it's so existential. And when Danny talks about AI, what happens in this contract negotiation is precedential, not just for our own industry, but for other industries as well. This, we call this hot labor summer or hot strike summer. There's a reason why. It's because there is a labor consciousness awakening. Everyone understands the threat to their jobs, whether you're in nursing, whether you're in numbers, whatever you work in, it's coming for you. So, the dumbest thing that AMPTP could have done is give America's two most visible unions the mic to tell the story. And that's what we do. We're in the story business.
So in California, we just passed a proposition, Prop 28, which is going to infuse almost $1 billion for arts education in the schools, which is historic and amazing.
Yes. Jobs,
but also what you're talking about is ensuring that there is a future for these kids that are coming in and having now, as we implement this, access to the arts, to say there is a career for you that has been around for 100 years, whatever, hundreds of years, over 100 years, that is going to be maintained. So is that part of it? I mean, it's important for us always to connect the dots, right? Because if we now have this in California, which is amazing to have actual arts education in every school district, once it's implemented, but they need to know that there's a career moving forward for them.
Absolutely, yes.
So,
I mean, a strike action is to right the current wrongs that corporate greed has put upon the laborers. When you look at it from a historical perspective, the last time that WGA and SAG was on strike was in 1960, and that strike we were able to secure a health and pension plan and TV residuals. Cut to 2007 when the Writers Guild went on strike over this thing that the companies were calling new media, which they claimed was not going to be profitable for them. 100 days afterwards, we came back to work and the studios launched Hulu. And cut to now where 50% of our members are working in quote-unquote new media, which is really streaming. We're now fighting to really right these injustices that we've been fighting for more than a decade now, and that is all going to pay off for the future showrunner, for the future screenwriter who is tired of working for free, for the future Appendix A writer who, when we were in these negotiations, the CEO stared at us and said, "Why do you need term employment? We're fine with giving you a daily rate." And we as writers, we're all in this together for this current generation and for the next.
Fantastic.
So this is the one that I know.
Can I ask you guys some personal questions, if that's okay?
Yeah.
So tell me about how you got your start in the arts. Like, what was...
Do you want to split it up? You want to keep it all the trio?
Yeah, the trio.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Tell me how you got your start in the arts.
You go first.
I got my start. I grew up in Chicago with a very robust cultural infrastructure, so museums, theater, opera. It was just field trips. So it's like embedded in being civically active in the city. My mom's a Chicago public school teacher, so that also helped. I had a very robust fine arts program at my public high school, and two great teachers who helped raise me artistically. So that's how I got my start. It was just part of it. And when love it. Support, man. When you grow up in a city that has Second City and Steppenwolf and the Goodman Lyric Opera, the Field Museum, Art Institute, you can't escape it. You learn that these are careers immediately. And arts teachers are jobs also. So you learn about the ecosystem, and that's how I got my start.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I grew up in Queens, New York. I'm first generation Latino. My parents are Argentinian immigrants. I came from a working class background. My dad's a mechanic. My mom worked for the post office, which is where I got my first introduction to unions and labor actions, even though I didn't even know at the time what that was. It was not an arts household. But the one thing that we always did nightly was we came to the dinner table and we told stories. And that's how I fell in love with writing and with characters, and television raised me. It was my babysitter. As a queer person, as a Latino, I saw myself in shows like My So-Called Life and Ugly Betty, and the power of representation really spoke to me and saved me during some really trying times growing up. And so when I broke into this business 10 years ago, I started in the broadcast model and television, and I got to go to set. I got to work with actors and directors and collaborate and get experience. And even though it was an introductory job, I was having real mentors lift me up and train me to be the future generation of showrunners. And now I'm, 10 years later in a great place in my career, not making what I should be making thanks to these outdated contracts, but I really worry about the little Dannys of today who are at home and they're not seeing themselves on the screen, and the systemic oppression and the economic oppression that these CEOs have built to hold us back. I'm just out here fighting for them.
I was just at my alma mater, and the students weren't asking me how to get an agent or how to break in. They were asking, how do I get involved and what can I do? And I love that, because what that shows is that what we're doing out here is working, because we are fighting for the next generation, and we're only able to reap the benefits of those who sacrificed before us. So we're standing on the shoulders of the strikes that have come before, and of people who have fought for opening up the industry in every way, socially, culturally, economically. So I think that it's also really important that we recognize that students who are graduating into the field right now see what's happening and are being taught the power of their own voice and collective action.
Absolutely.
And so when you talk about arts education, that's also a part of that.
And I mean, the general public, the perception of what happens in Hollywood is that you're all living high on the hog. They see a cult of celebrity, of course, in our country, of who we focus on. What would you want to say in terms of dispelling some myths about what happens here in Hollywood for the people who are doing the work behind the scenes that are not in front of the screen, or even those who are in front of the screen who are not the ones who are the stars of the shows?
Yeah, as you said, there is this misconception out there that all writers are fancy pants living in mansions in Beverly Hills, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. We're workers. We jump from show to show, just like many laborers do with term employment. We make good money when we're working, and unfortunately the current contract has economic systems in place to prevent us from working regularly. So there are trying times, like I myself, have signed up to be an LAUSD substitute teacher. I've looked into driving Uber, but we're a single car family and I can't put my husband out from having wheels. We're really struggling, and all of Americans are really struggling. And so that's why I really feel that it's important for labor to be out in the streets, but also specifically arts education and arts labor to make it known that we're all workers in this together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I've taken on 2 other jobs also, and I think that there's this misconception that we're either coastal elites or lazy layabouts, when the truth is we're mostly middle class workers. Whether you're working in live events and you're working, again, construction or electrics or, set painter or whatever that is. Auto workers, drivers, craft services, costume, wardrobe, pyrotechnics, whatever your thing is, amusement parks. I mean, there's a whole creative workforce there. It's what Danny said. It's term to term. It's gig employment. And when the terms get shorter, that money lasts less. So, there's an economic justice issue here that I want everyone to understand. We're working class people. We just happen to make a product that's on a national scale. I know a lot of people as a theater worker, tons of my friends who have been on Broadway or are on Broadway have to take other jobs afterwards because theater doesn't pay. The American theater is collapsing all around us right now. That whole ecosystem is dying. And that goes into the whole question about nonprofits, and it's a whole other can of worms. But all of us are just trying to make ends meet. There's a very, very few at the very, very top who are very, very wealthy. The rest of us are trying to make an honest living.
And Danny, you talked about the essential nature of this work. As a child in a family that told stories that then you looked at TV, as you said. Let's talk a little bit more about why this work matters.
Yeah, I firmly believe that representation in media matters. I think stories are very powerful. They change hearts and minds and society and culture. I'm part of a group called the Think Tank for Inclusion and Equity, where we put out yearly reports showing how much our stories matter and impact society. I think we're living in very dangerous times, in times of misinformation, in times of tribalism, and entertainment, whether it's highbrow or lowbrow, brings us all together and allows us to look at views outside of our own. And so that's why I really believe media representation matters, but I also believe that inclusion and diversity in front and behind of the camera matters.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're in the free speech business, we're in the story business, and if we're not telling a story of America that represents America, we're in big trouble. And when you talk about tribalism, part of how we get so tribal is because we're in an echo chamber where we're only hearing our own narratives. And so the universality of the stories that we're able to tell brings America together. You know, we can heal the fractured divisiveness of this moment through our storytelling. Black Panther is a great example of bringing all kinds of people together all over the world through this story that, you know, decades ago would be a dream. It was a dream, and now it's finally here. So it's that kind of, you know, and that's a superhero movie, and people love to, like, you know, shit on Marvel, but there is something about that kind of story that when you have that kind of money and that kind of opportunity does something to a culture, does something to a consciousness. And I think that's really important to invest in.
So we, as an organization, firmly believe that arts workers are essential workers, that this is not an amenity to society, but this is a critical piece of how we not only build community, and learn empathy and expand our horizons and come together. But it's also, as we know, a massive economic driver for all local communities. So can you just talk a little bit more about, again, or if we could just say specifically how critical arts are, like just give me a soundbite around how essential arts are to to the world.
Art is essential in building communities and propping up those communities economically, socially, and it's incredibly essential to be able to uplift the human condition.
Excellent. Just two more questions.
Yeah.
One last one. One is, so you talked about how you're surviving, looking for other jobs, having to take on multiple jobs, but you're still standing out here in a day when you would normally be making money, be working. There's a new bill that was introduced by Senator Portantino, SB 799, that is already something that happens in New York, that after 2 weeks of striking, you get unemployment. How important is that?
I mean, the unemployment bill that's sitting on Governor Newsom's desk right now waiting for his signature is incredibly important. It's essential for all types of workers, especially those who are on strike. I mean, you know, we're living paycheck to paycheck. Some of us don't have a paycheck to live paycheck to paycheck. This bill could prevent foreclosures. It could prevent evictions. It could prevent businesses from shutting down. It's really helping members have a voice in the process, but it's really propping up the local economies, which, as we, you know, Matthew and I have been saying, it's like these strikes are hurting all types of people across the board, not just in the entertainment business. And I think that this bill will truly allow us all to weather this storm together.
Yeah, the LA economy, the California economy, I don't know what the exact number is, but it's in the billions that have been lost. So the AMPTP strike has impacted the whole California economy, full stop. So we need that bill.
Great. And for the general public, again, what can they do to support during this time? What can they do to support the striking workers?
For those who are in a financial position to support, I always recommend people check out the Entertainment Community Fund. That's entertainmentcommunity.org, where you can donate any amount to any striking member or any person who's been impacted by the AMPTP's dual strikes at this point. There's a number of different resources that the Entertainment Community Fund provides, not just financially, mental health, connections to low cost, if not free, healthcare. But I also say, have conversations with people, talk to your friends, to your family about why stories matter, why the arts are so important to you, how they helped you survive during a really difficult time, or that movie Barbie, Oppenheimer, that you ran to the movie theaters. Those were written by writers. Those were cast by actors. Like, we are behind all of those things that keep you alive and make you feel happy and make you cry, and your support either on the web or just talking to people is incredibly valuable.
I would agree with everything that Danny just said. Your support online, also educating people about what's happening in our industry, because it's going to ignite oh yeah, that's happening in my business too. And so we need to be educating one another about what's happening in our business. When I was back in Chicago, my old gym teacher from high school said, I don't know all the details, but I'm proud of you all for what you're doing, because the wage gaps and he didn't use this language, but the economic injustice that's been happening over decades has gotten so egregious. We support you. And I thought, I was not a gym class kid, and I was like, that's amazing. The other thing I'll say is, when you watch a TV show or a movie, that's a small business, and when you look at the end and you wait for the credits, those are all the jobs. I love the credits. I love the credits because that's a list of all the people who worked on the thing.
Yeah.
What other industry to get a list of people who made this thing collectively? It's awesome. So watch the credits and recognize these are people that this job paid their light bills, and put food on the table, and put their kids through college, and paid off school debts, and they're going from movie to movie, TV show to TV show, whatever it is. And I just think it's so important that we recognize that this is American jobs. And one of America's greatest exports is our culture and our film and TV and the stories we've told. The story business has transformed this country, but also the world. It's fiscal hard power and political soft power. And we also have to recognize that when we're talking about what we do.
So we're at the front lines of a labor movement. We're at the front lines of a workers' movement. We're at the front lines of what's happening here in the United States in terms of reshifting the power, the economic power. And we want to thank Matthew and Danny for all their hard work. And we invite you to join us, either come down or go to the Entertainment Fund, donate, but recognize that this is not just an arts problem, that this is a problem for all of the United States, for the world to look at, examine, and let's right these injustices. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, just try to conclude.